Every network starts at the smallest possible scale, the devices closest to you. Your phone connecting to your wireless earbuds, your smartwatch syncing notifications. These devices do not need a massive infrastructure. They only need a tiny network surrounding one person. This is called a personal area network, or PAN. It is your own personal digital bubble. But your phone still needs a way to communicate with devices outside that bubble. Instead of just your personal devices, imagine every device inside your home communicating together. Your laptop, your smart TV, your gaming console, your printer, all of them exist inside the same local space. This is a local area network, or LAN. Think of it like one building where everyone can communicate without leaving. But most modern local networks are not built entirely with cables anymore. A wireless local area network, or WLAN, is the wireless side of a local network. Instead of devices communicating through Ethernet cables, they connect using Wi-Fi signals while still being part of the same local network. This is the network most people interact with every day, your home Wi-Fi. But one building is still limited. What happens when we connect multiple buildings together? Imagine a university. The library has its own network, the engineering building has another, the dormitories have another. Each building has its own LAN. But when those networks connect together across one campus, they create a campus area network, or CAN. Instead of one building communicating, now an entire organization can communicate. But campuses still cover only a small area. Now expand the network even further. Instead of one campus, connect networks across an entire city. Businesses, hospitals, schools, government buildings. This creates a Metropolitan Area Network, or MAN. A MAN allows multiple locations across a city to communicate as one connected system. But cities are still only a small part of the world. The largest scale of networking is the Wide Area Network, or WAN. A WAN connects networks across huge distances, different cities, different countries, different continents. The Internet itself is the world's largest WAN. Your simple request to watch a YouTube video might travel through your home network, your internet provider, multiple routers, underwater cables, and finally reach a server thousands of kilometers away. But creating a worldwide network creates a new problem. With billions of devices connected, how does the system know which device is yours? Every device connected to a network needs an identity. Inside your local network, that identity is the MAC address. A MAC address is a unique identifier assigned to your device's network hardware. Your phone has one, your laptop has one, your smart TV has one. Local networks use MAC addresses to identify devices and deliver data to the correct hardware. Although modern devices can sometimes use randomized MAC addresses for privacy, the core idea remains the same. The network needs a way to recognize individual devices. But there is a problem. A MAC address tells the network who the device is. It does not tell the Internet where that device currently is. This is where the IP address comes in. If a MAC address is your identity, an IP address is your location. When you connect to a network, you receive an IP address that tells other systems where to send data. Your home Wi-Fi gives you one, a coffee shop gives you another, mobile data gives you another. Your hardware stays the same, but your network location changes. Now the system knows who you are and where you are. But knowing the destination is not enough. The network still needs a way to deliver the data. Imagine a large office building with hundreds of rooms. A package arrives at the front desk. The receptionist cannot just announce "package for device 123" to the entire building every single time. Someone needs to know exactly where that package belongs. That is the job of a switch. A switch connects devices inside the same local network and uses MAC addresses to forward data to the correct destination. It is the traffic manager inside the building. It keeps local communication organized and prevents every device from receiving traffic that was never meant for it. But what happens when the package needs to leave the building entirely?
A switch handles traffic inside one network. A router handles traffic between different networks. Your data does not travel directly from your phone to YouTube's servers. It moves through many different networks: your home network, your internet service provider, other networks across the world. At each stage, routers examine IP addresses and decide the next best path for your data to take. The switch finds the right room. The router finds the right city. Without routers connecting networks together, the internet would just be millions of isolated networks that could never communicate. But now there's another problem. Your computer is not just doing one thing. It could be watching YouTube, receiving messages, syncing files, and running a game at the same time. So how does the system know which application should receive the data? The IP address gets data to your device, but your device has many different applications waiting for information: your browser, your email app, your games, your streaming services. They all share the same internet connection. So the computer needs another level of identification. This is where network ports come in. Think of your IP address as the address of a building. The port is the apartment number inside. A port tells your operating system which application should receive the incoming data. This is why multiple programs can communicate online at the same time without everything becoming mixed together. But there is still one question: should this traffic even be allowed inside? The internet is not just full of useful information. It is also full of unwanted traffic, attack attempts, malicious requests, suspicious connections. A network needs someone standing at the entrance deciding what comes in and what stays out. That is a firewall. A firewall monitors network traffic and compares it against a set of predefined rules. Allowed traffic enters, suspicious traffic gets blocked. But there's another challenge. Your home probably has many devices, yet the outside world usually sees only one public address. How does that work? Imagine an apartment building. Inside are hundreds of people, but from the street perspective, everyone shares one building address. Your home network works in a similar way. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV, your gaming console, they all have their own private IP addresses inside your home network, but your router uses NAT, or Network Address Translation, to allow all of them to share one public IP address when communicating with the internet. When data leaves your home, NAT modifies the information so the outside world sees one public identity. When responses return, it keeps track of which device requested them and sends the data back to the correct place. One public address, many private devices. But what if you do not want websites communicating directly with your device? Normally, your device communicates directly with websites, but a proxy server acts as a middleman. Instead of your device contacting a website, the proxy contacts the website on your behalf. The website sees the proxy server, not your original connection. Think of it like asking someone else to collect a package for you. Proxy servers can be used for privacy, filtering content, controlling access, or routing traffic through another location. But there's still one weakness. Your traffic may still be visible while traveling across the public internet. This is where a VPN comes in. A virtual private network creates an encrypted tunnel between your device and a VPN server. Instead of your traffic traveling openly across the internet, it first travels through a protected pathway. Anyone outside can usually see that you connected to a VPN, but they cannot easily see the contents of your encrypted traffic. A VPN does not make you completely invisible. It does something more specific. It creates a private path through a public network. And now our data has traveled through every major stage. It knows where to go. It knows who should receive it knows how to get there, and it knows how to stay protected. But there's one final question. How do engineers organize all of these moving parts? The OSI model breaks network communication into 7 layers, making it easier to understand where different technologies belong. At the bottom is the physical layer. This is where the actual signals travel: cables, fiber optics, wireless signals. Above that is the data link layer, where local communication happens using concepts like MAC addresses and switches. Next is the network layer, where IP addresses and routers decide how data moves between networks. The transport layer manages how data is delivered between devices. The session layer manages ongoing communication sessions. The presentation layer handles how information is formatted, translated, and encrypted. And finally, the application layer is where the software you interact with connects to the network: your browser, your messaging apps, your streaming platforms. The OSI model is not the exact structure the modern internet follows, but it is one of the best ways to understand how all these pieces fit together. From the physical signals leaving your device to the application displaying information on your screen, every layer plays a role. We've explained the roads, the addresses, the buildings, and the security, but we still haven't talked about the actual language computers use to communicate. That's where network protocols come in. See you next in that video.